This video is going to cover the debit-credit rules. The terms debit and credit are used in accounting, and sometimes students like to get them confused and or think that they are more difficult than what they are. So, the terms debit and credits are really just code words. It's going to be a simplified way for us to discuss things in accounting in a simplified manner. Kind of like ones and zeros in computer programming. So here we go. Let's go through the debit and the credit rules. Let's start with the debit rules. Any items, in this case, assets and expenses, I'll get to this one in a minute. Any items that I put on this left-hand debit side are just debit accounts. Debit accounts follow the debit rules, which means if you want to increase this account, you would do so with the term debit, or the code word debit. So, assets increase with a debit, whereas they would then decrease with a credit. In debit-credit world, there's only two answers. It's either debit or credit. So, assets and expenses are debit accounts. They increase with a debit, they decrease with a credit, and their normal balance is a debit. At the end of an accounting period, all debit accounts have to have debit balances. This will be described in a later video. However, there are also accounts that are called credit accounts. Liabilities, equity accounts, and revenue accounts are credit accounts. Credit accounts increase with a credit, therefore they decrease with a debit, and their normal balance at the end of the accounting period has to be a credit. Again, debits and credits are just code words for how we treat these accounts. Assets, expenses are debit accounts, whereas liabilities, equity, and revenues are credit balance accounts or credit accounts. If you follow these rules, you will always keep your accounting equation in balance. In the case of the owner's withdrawal account, the owner's withdrawal account is actually called a contra-equity account. The owner's capital account is an equity account, and it has a credit balance and it increases with a credit, whereas the owner's withdrawal account is called a contra-equity account, therefore it's contra or opposite to the equity rules. So any contra-equity accounts, in this example the owner's withdrawals, would then be debit balance accounts. So whenever the owner withdraws assets, you would then say you would debit the owner's withdrawal account. This has been a very brief discussion of the debit-credit rules, which we will continue to use throughout the rest of our accounting education. Don't get those debits and credits mixed up, and don't make them mean more than what they really are. Just refer back to your debit-credit rules or your debit-credit playbook in this example. All books have another way to show the debit-credit rules. I liked my debit-credit playbook example, so I've used it. See your textbook for the debit-credit rules. In the same rules are being described or displayed, in maybe a slightly different format.